Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for joining us this evening for this last one in the current series of the Antarctica Insight live webinars. Tonight, we're talking about breaking the ice ceiling. So we're going to discuss the history of female endeavour and achievement in Antarctica. And as it's the eve of International Women's Day, we'll hear about the ice ceilings that our incredible guests have already broken. So we can find out more about the UK Antarctic Heritage Trust all-female team at Port Lockroy and look ahead to the future and the boundaries that are yet to be broken. I'm Sophie Montagne. I'm the head of operations at the UK Antarctic Heritage Trust. What that basically means is I'm responsible for all of our Antarctic activities. So whether that be setting up, training, preparing and supplying the Port Lockroy team, or also supporting and sorting out all of the logistics for the conservation teams at all of our sites around the continent. So the season's beginning to wrap up, things are beginning to calm down, and it's really nice to have this opportunity to talk to you all today. But with me, I also have three pioneering women with unique perspectives on travel, exploration, and breaking the ice ceilings that are often imposed by others, whether they be families, communities, or society as a whole. First up, I'm going to get Phoebe to introduce herself because the things that she has done are such a long list that I can't even do it justice. And Phoebe will then hopefully introduce some of the others too.
Oh, thank you, Sophie. Great to be here. I'm Phoebe Smith. I'm an adventurer, a travel writer, an author, photographer, a broadcaster, anything else that seems to end with ER, albeit. And I'm also co-founder of a charity called the We2 Foundation, and we work by taking groups of underprivileged young people on life-changing expeditions that are carbon negative as well. So with me tonight are two of our young women that came with me to Antarctica in November just gone. First of all, I have Alison Clark, who's based in Wales from Llanelli. And she was one of our young people who came with us. And we also have Elise Owen, who is going to be joining us, but has been having a slightly technical issue. She's not still in Antarctica, she is back. But we're going to hopefully catch up with her later, who's in Nottingham.
Okay, hello everyone. Yeah, I had this amazing opportunity for Phoebe and Dwayne to take me to Antarctica, and it was honestly life-changing. And yeah, I'm just in Wales and currently just doing applied medical science as a uni student. But yeah, it's still a great opportunity.
Fantastic, great. Well, it's really kind of you all to join to tune in, and hopefully we'll hear from Elise later as well. Welcome to everybody in the audience. I think we've got some great numbers, so it's great to have you here. Just a point to note, if you have any questions, we're going to allow plenty of time for questions at the end. We'd love to answer them, whatever they are, no matter how detailed. So do put them into the comments, and then we'll address those with all of the panel when time allows towards the end of the session. So just to talk about going back in time a little bit, the history of women on the continent. And it's famously, Antarctica has always been known as the womanless continent, which obviously isn't true. It's just that nobody actually wanted to tell those stories. So there are oral records of Maori women going back as far as 650 CE, and Maori women had travelled to the region and probably been the first to see it. Since then, there's been a 16-year-old French explorer called Louise Séguin, who travelled to Antarctica disguised as a boy, which is pretty big commitment. That was back in 1773, and she was actually discovered. And I think it was quite embarrassing for the ship that had let her join that they'd managed to slip a woman on board. Good for her. There have also been a series of whaling wives who have accompanied their husbands. So that was in the 19th century, men that will have gone south and taken their families with them. So plenty of examples there. But again, not stories we ever really hear about very much. And then bring it right forward into the modern era. It took ages for women to be involved in science in Antarctica itself. Even the British Antarctic Survey, who now have loads of women on their bases, took a long time to actually allow someone to go south. And the first, in the end, was a lady called Janet Thompson, who was a geologist. And she travelled in 1983 as part of a Bass expedition. I think this is we don't have a picture of her, unfortunately, but this is her kind of statement as a patch that I assume she wore on her jacket. Poor Janet worked for Bass for 18 years before they would actually allow her to go south. And they changed the rules to let her to go ahead and do some of that scientific work. But prior to that, she was impatient and absolutely determined to get there. So she actually joined an American expedition in 1976, which allowed her to be the first woman to actually undertake scientific work on the continent itself. So she was a proper pioneer. I think her achievements have been widely recognised since. There's a glacier that's been named after her. She received the Fuchs Medal and the Polar Medal, and really kind of paved the way for women taking part in Antarctic science. So if we bring that forward to now, how have things changed? And I think really dramatically, if you look at the heads of most polar organisations now, currently, almost all of them are actually headed by women, which is quite extraordinary. And they're not new to the job. So there's the two Janes, Jane Rumble and Dame Jane Francis. Jane Rumble heads the Polar Regions Department at the Foreign Office and has done for many years. Dame Jane Francis is the head of BASS, the British Antarctic Survey, and has obviously had a fantastic career in science herself. Recently, the British Antarctic Survey have also appointed Anna Jones as the Director of Science. So again, a woman in the top job there on the scientific side too. And of course, Camilla Nicol is our own CEO and head of the UK Antarctic Heritage Trust for the last 8 years. So there's some serious power players at most Antarctic events and strongly representing the women. Just to mention is obviously the Port Lockroy team, the team of 4 women who have been down there now for 5 months. It's not our first all-female team, but they are showing that the women have the strength and the skills that we need to go and do the job down there. And they've done absolutely outstanding work. They must be absolutely exhausted by this stage. They welcomed so many visitors to Port Lockroy, and always with those smiles you can see on their faces there. So the work they've carried out this season is incredible. They're actually expecting their last guest tomorrow, and will then start packing up for the end of the season. So we look forward to welcoming them back in the next few weeks and hearing all about it. So just one last person to add is Jo Bradshaw, who is our field guide for the Damoy season this year. And again, the stories of that will come out shortly, but they had quite an eventful season, absolutely crazy weather, some really challenging conditions to be camping in for 4 weeks. And Jo was their sort of safety support and expedition sort of manager. And she did an incredible job holding that team together and fighting every fire that happened and everything that went wrong. So yeah, really impressive women, I think, that are operating down there now. They've all paved the way, or these people have all helped to pave the way for our place in Antarctica today. And I'm really interested to hear, Phoebe, how this has affected your career and obviously the path that you've taken up to now. And perhaps you could explain a little bit about that.
Yeah, and then we've got to hear about you, Sophie, because you definitely also have trailblazed your way in Antarctica as well, and proved some really interesting points that I think as women we've known for quite a while how tough we are. I think I'd have to say that obviously I started off by saying I'm an adventurer, but I never, when I grew up, I didn't. Oh, there's a funny noise. I grew up thinking that adventure wasn't for me. I grew up in North Wales in a quite a rundown coastal area, which the national press referred to as the Costa del Dole. We were kind of told that, you know, people like us didn't go, and certainly would never have thought we could go to somewhere like Antarctica, would never even thought we would have left the area. It was kind of like you were there and that's where we were going to be forever. I lived probably 20 miles from Snowdonia National Park, but didn't have the skills or knowledge or could afford the kit to go and explore the outdoors. So I don't have a classic, I was always into the outdoors and this is why I became an adventure story. Mine was much more found my way in later on, which was I ended up getting a job in a pub, saved all my money and decided to go and travel. And when I did that, I discovered wild camping and the outdoors that way. And when I got back, I decided I was going to become a tourist in my own backyard, and I kind of made my way as an adventurer, kind of pioneering this whole mindset of becoming a tourist back home and pushing yourself past your comfort limits in the UK. And it was really funny. I've never thought of myself, I know we're talking about this because it's International Women's Day coming up, I've never really thought of myself as a woman. It wasn't that I thought of myself as a man or as something else. I never really thought it was something that mattered. I just found out I loved having adventures and I happened to be a woman. But what became clear is that other people had an issue with it. When I wrote, I started writing books about the outdoors, trying to get people into adventuring and you know, into that mindset that anyone can do it. And publishers would tell me not to mention any difficulties I'd had being a woman. I got trolled on social media. I got threats on emails because I was a woman showing I was doing these adventurous things. Some of the things I did was I became the first person to sleep at all the extreme points of mainland Britain by myself. I did an extreme sleep out dangling on portaledges, these suspended tents from 10 UK landmarks. I solo hiked in Greenland from the ice cap to the ocean, carrying everything that I needed. And I finally made it to Antarctica actually for work as a travel writer. I got sent there and did a wonderful trip that went to South Georgia and the Falklands and then down across the Antarctic Circle. And I remember very distinctly going to Grytviken in South Georgia into the post office, and I said something and the guy asked me why on earth someone like me was there. And I don't know whether it's because of my accent or whether just my age, or I don't know what it was, but I thought, I've never seemed to be told I'm the person that should be here. And I loved the trip because I loved all the Shackleton history and seeing all the old photos. But one question I kept asking myself was, where are all the women? And why had I grown up not thinking that women should be here? And so I tried to come up with an idea to go and do something at that time, it was probably around 2015. There weren't as many women's firsts that had happened. I did some research and found some, but I just wanted to do something big. And I ended up meeting a fellow adventurer called Dwayne Fields. And we decided that between us, he's a black man from North London. He'd been told he couldn't, shouldn't, and wouldn't be able to do something. I'd been told that being a woman from a working class background. And I think all these things do intersect with each other. I do think it's a lot about where you've come from and privilege as much as anything else. And we decided we'd come so far as adventurers in our own field, and we wanted to help other people who were like us, who came from the areas and the backgrounds who told we couldn't do something. And we wanted to take them somewhere really spectacular. So we started to try and get funding for me and Dwayne to first of all go and do an Antarctic first. And when we were looking around for funding, it was sort of 2017, 2018. So not that long ago. I was told by several that there were plenty of, and this is a direct quote, sexier, younger and prettier girls than you. I was at a show when me and Dwayne were trying to get funding, and he introduced me to someone saying he wanted to do this trip to Antarctica with me. this was a guy, he came up, he felt my bicep without saying hello and just said, "Are you sure she's strong enough?" I felt like a cow in a cattle market. And then so we stopped trying to get funding for ourselves and decided, do you know what, we need to take the next generation, which is where people like Alison and Elise and the 10 young people we eventually took to Antarctica come from, because we thought, we've got to change this, we've got to go further back and get more people seeing that women and girls and people from all different environments belong in Antarctica. Because we need to, I think you'll agree, when you go see the place and experience it, you get a real sense of how important the ecosystem there is and how much we've already affected it, and how what happens there definitely affects us back home and vice versa. So we started fundraising for the We2 Foundation, and I during that time I unexpectedly had a baby who's now 2 years old, and funny enough, again, when I thought, that was in 2020, I thought maybe things have been improved in the last few years. My teammate was approached by someone who was in this community who had heard I'd had a baby and told him, well, of course she won't be able to go now. So, you know, we'll introduce you to one of our kind of people, obviously a man, who would be able to go with him instead. And he said, no, absolutely not. I'm still going to work with my teammate. So, you know, and funnily enough, even when we were on the trip, a few guests, we went with them, we went on an expedition ship with Hurtigruten, who were wonderful with us. But even then, a couple of guests, when they found out I had a 2-year-old who was not quite 2, they were saying, but who on earth's looking after your son? And I was like, well, obviously his dad. He's just as capable. And my teammate Dwayne has young kids, and no one asked him who was looking after his kids. So there's still definitely something there. And I think a lot of it has to do with representation of what we're seeing. And like you said, in the past sort of maybe 20, 30 years, we've seen a lot more, which has helped, but there's still obviously a long way to go. And so what we wanted to do with the We2 Foundation was work with underprivileged young people from areas and backgrounds where they would never in their wildest dreams think about going to Antarctica. And we wanted to take and give them a global view. And we wanted to get them to, they didn't pay any money to come with us. They paid with environmental good deeds. So they were doing, Alison, who's here, can tell you about what she did, but we had some that were getting their school to grow their own fruit and vegetable to reduce the carbon food miles. We had another who was replanting wild seed bombs all down the River Clyde because the ecosystem there had been destroyed. We had them all starting to engage with their local community, because the idea was that community would benefit from this young person going. And then when we got there, you know, it was about interacting with the scientists. Hurtigruten has a very good ratio of male and females. So there were some wonderful female scientists who headed up a lot of good projects, which our young people got to be involved in, which was brilliant. And so, yeah, we hopefully, we had, by taking these young people, we kind of showed them that there is this other world that's open to them, and sending them back home again. Now it's been 3 months since we went on, or 4 months even, on expedition. The hope is that that seed gets planted in communities, that like someone like me has gone, and Elise, who hopefully will join us later, has she's in school and she's had younger girls come up to her and say, are you the one who's been to Antarctica? Like, she's suddenly someone like them who's gone and done this incredible thing. You know, the name of a place, Antarctica, for a lot of people is almost make-believe. It's like, how would you ever go there? How can I go there? You know, certainly when I was Alison or Elise's age, I never thought it was a place for me. And then when you look into it, and like you said, it's been a very short history since women have even been allowed to go. British women have been allowed to go. And, you know, we saw Shackleton, when he put out the call for people to come and join him on expeditions, he got lots of girls and women writing to him, and he just completely refused to even enter into that mindset. It was like, no, women can't do it. They can't do it. And, you know, we've been battling that for a long time. So it's great to hear things have moved on. But I do still think there is a way to go.
Absolutely. And I think it's so interesting that, you know, it's just, dare I say it, just about in my lifetime that BAS, you know, since BAS actually let women go to Antarctica and do this research. And it seems now so normal, certainly in my experience of working in the polar regions kind of since our expedition. It seems very normal, very kind of accepted, but historically that's just absolutely not the case. And definitely it really resonated, what you said about mums always getting asked how you could leave your child. I mean, it's not abandonment. It is 50-50 relationship here. There is someone else to look after the child, and that's definitely something that myself and my teammates are very keen to show and to say, actually, most of us have now got kids. About four out of 6 of us have got kids, and just to be able to say, well, we could still go and do an expedition, and the dads are perfectly capable. That's what they do all the time.
Yeah, no one asked that of the explorers of old, did they?
No, exactly. And also they don't ask Dwayne. It's just not a thing. Whereas for women, it's how could you leave your child? Well, if they've got a capable dad, then it's absolutely the same thing. I think we've got Elise just arrived.
Yes, hello, Elise.
Sorry about the delay.
Glad you could join us.
It's great to have you here, Elise. Could you just explain a little bit about how you got involved in We2 and some of your experiences in Antarctica?
Well, I was nominated by my auntie, and obviously I went through the process with Phoebe and Dwayne, and I had to do my pay it forward project, which were like encouraging the school to be more eco-friendly, bringing in eco-friendly furniture, starting like a garden. We've been in contact with the Queen's Green Canopy, which provide trees for schools and communities to grow them. And before you would have got a plaque from the Queen to say that we've got the tree from them, but obviously now it should be the King. So we're still working on that. It's a little bit of a long process, but we're still getting onto it. So yeah, and Antarctica was an amazing experience. I feel like Phoebe and Dwayne, both of them, but it was good to have Phoebe, especially because having a female role model that is helping us to become more than what we think that we can be. I never imagined that at all that I'd ever be able to get that far across the world. I didn't even think I'd get further than Greece. So it was an amazing opportunity that was just given to us. And we did so many fun things, and we learned so much while we were there. Especially because I got to sleep on the ice as well. It was an amazing experience, despite it being so cold and everything like that. It was really fun.
I think it sounds absolutely extraordinary, and particularly cool that Phoebe was mentioning that you've had people at school come up to you and say, are you the one that went to Antarctica? And how have you been able to share what you experienced with other people in a way that might have inspired them?
Well, I've made sure that I've told the students about where I've been and what happened. And obviously I told them that I was going before because I made the classes do small assemblies, and I spoke to them about climate change and tried to teach them about what it is and what they could do to help improve the school, and how they want to improve, how they deal with being eco-friendly at home as well as at school, growing their own vegetables. And we're supposed to be doing a monthly challenge, an eco-friendly challenge. So they get to win something to encourage them to be more eco-friendly. And I feel like it's made me think and believe that I can do more, because it's just kind of a weird thing, because sorry, it's sorry.
Great job. Oh. And
Sorry, I'll start again. Sorry, can you ask the question again? What was the question? Sorry.
Well, it was just I'm particularly interested to know, just in case we lose you, Elise, with technical problems, I'd really love to know how this has changed your future, or how Antarctica might be part of your life or your story going forward.
Well, it's definitely encouraged me to want to travel and learn more about everything around me, and be able to share my experiences with other people, especially young people in my local area, because most of the people in my local area haven't even been on an airplane before. So it's like, if I can do it, then I can show them that they can do it. And obviously, a lot of the young girls come up to me and speak to me about it because they want to know how they can become and do things like that. And obviously, not everyone's going to get the opportunity to do it through We2, but they still need to know that they have the opportunity to do it despite money and stuff like that. So, you know, I want to be able to build something where everyone has that access, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's great. And also, and does that also apply to the outdoors? Have you kind of got a new relationship now with the outdoors and kind of a confidence to go out and explore in the UK a bit more?
I actually love that. I love traveling. Like, I've always loved going away. Like, my aunties took me to like loads of different places. Like, even if it's not far away, it's like a mini adventure. And I feel like everywhere you go is an adventure. Even if you're like, say I'm in Nottingham and I go to somewhere that's further than like my main city, it's still like, oh my gosh, I didn't know this was here. And it just makes me want to be more outdoorsy. Like, I've always loved nature and stuff like that, but it's made me want to actually go and see things and want to do more and experience more because I know I can.
That's brilliant. Elise, thank you so much for joining us. I know that you're out and about, so I'm sorry for the interruption to where you are, but sound is a little bit dodgy. So if you don't mind, we're going to just mute you for now and hear from Alison, if that's okay, to understand a bit more about the best parts of your experience with We2.
I think the best part was definitely seeing penguins. They were adorable, but also learning about all those scientists on board, which were women. It was really encouraging because personally, I always thought, well, of course, I was like brought up in a poorer area, so in my experience, it was always like, oh yeah, you will either be at home with the kids or working in a shop, and those people actually encouraged me that, you know what, I want to have a good future. I can't lie, I do want to be rich. And it just encouraged me, you know, like if they can do it, why can't I do something just as great and maybe help out other people in the future to get this experience. And you know, it definitely has changed my life. I mean, previously I haven't fully thought about the environment as much. I did think about it like to some extent, you know, but then seeing the entire Antarctica place was honestly life-changing. And I kind of understood, I don't know, I was kind of thinking about how dinosaurs are now extinct, and I don't want to be a part of the era where, let's say, whales will go extinct. But yeah, it was definitely highly encouraging and life-changing to see all those women do great things, especially a woman like Phoebe. I mean, let's be honest, she's a massive inspiration. You know, I can't really say much. I don't even know what to say. It's just great.
You don't have to, Alison. But Alison, I remember you going to one of the lectures with one of the scientists and saying how much it suddenly inspired you to want to save the whales. You were like, we have to save them, and it really helped, didn't it? Hearing them talk about what they did and their work.
But yeah, 100%. I mean, whales is such a is like massive animals, you know, and just thinking that in the future, let's say my grandkids or whatever may not see whales, they may only see a fish and be like, you know, they're only tiny creatures in the sea. Why should we care at all? But to be fair, they do make a difference to everything, even our health, you know. So yeah, all those women were really inspiring to go towards.
So this picture that you can see now is you're going to feel very envious now. This was the evening that we took Elise to go and camp. So we managed to get 2 spots for 2 of our young people to go camp on the ice. And after a lot of heated debate, it was decided that the fairest way to decide who slept out on Antarctica was to pull names out of the hat. And we pulled Elise and Eve out the hat. And it was really interesting, actually, that those 2 got to go, because I think Eve definitely really wanted to go. Oh, there's Elise looking very adventurous there. And Elise really didn't want to go. She kept saying, shall I give the place to someone else? And but didn't. And I think she's probably pleased as well that she didn't. But it was really interesting that it was 2, you know, everyone's name went in the hat. It was 2 girls that got picked out. And when they went to go camp on the ice, there's Elise and Eve there putting up their tent. They actually, our whole team went on ahead and dug the toilet igloo for everyone, and helped everyone sort of stamp down the snow so that they could set up their tents, which is why theirs was last. But it was mainly men who put their names in the hat to go, mainly men who got the experience, and a couple of women were there too, and said how inspirational it was for them. They were older ladies, and I don't think they'd mind me saying that, but they were really inspired to see two young girls coming and having this experience. And they said, oh, we really thought it would be two of the lads who came. So this is great to see that it's two girls. So we like to think that not only have our young people from the foundation inspired their friends and younger people, but also that it kind of works both ways. You know, it was a great opportunity for knowledge sharing all around, and I think, I mean, that's why we called it We2. It's we're not against anyone who came before us, and we're not begrudging of any of the explorers who were there, and you know, all the great male explorers. It's just trying to say there's room for everyone, and there should be room for everyone, because actually when we all work together, we can achieve something really amazing, and we can make a real difference. Which is definitely what you've seen, Sophie, because yours was a big team doing just that for women.
Do you know what, Phoebe? Since you mentioned those older women, I do remember that it was also inspiring. There was a woman when we were climbing the mountains. She was about 65, maybe 70, and she was so greatly motivated. I don't think she was in the best condition to even do it, but she said, she mentioned even older woman who climbed the mountain. She was like, yeah, if she can do it, I can definitely do it. And I remember that was also so inspiring. I mean, you know, it is some sort of an age where it's kind of difficult, and she still went for it. It was amazing.
Brilliant.
I think this really shows that, and particularly from Elise and Eve's experience, perhaps of camping, and if Elise wasn't keen at the start, just that sometimes if you just volunteer for something, or if you're voluntold in her case, then it's amazing how. And I think, Phoebe, you had this with your sort of discovery of a love for camping. You know, it's something that you wouldn't necessarily think that you'd enjoy, and then actually can have this incredibly freeing element to it, and you know, take your whole life in a different direction. And certainly for me, that was what happened when the opportunity came to apply for Ice Maiden. I didn't have any relevant experience. I'd never done anything like that. I absolutely hate the cold. I have worn maximum thermals for the whole of the winter this winter, despite a good bit of central heating. Really the opportunity was there to go and experience something different. And I didn't really think that I was the right person for the job, or that I could even do it. But I thought, I'll put my name in the hat and volunteer. And then actually, when you do something like that, you discover not only that you can manage in the cold, which surprised me completely, but also that you could really enjoy it. And then actually that 250 people applied, but by the end of a 2-year sort of training and recruitment process, I found I was on that team of 6, and that someone had seen potential in me that I didn't know I had. And that was what's really amazing, I think, about an organisation like this, like We2, and giving people the opportunity to apply for something, test themselves, and go far beyond the boundaries that they'd already set on themselves, or those that perhaps people around them had set, whether it was family, friends, society, or anything else. And I think that was kind of one of the most amazing things for me about our expedition. Should we move then, kind of segue onto exploration and how women have kind of been carving out a niche in that area? There's definitely, this season has been quite one for the women in Antarctica, and I'm sure most people will have heard about Paula Preet, who did her second Antarctic expedition this season, and absolutely grafted against all the elements, and really fought to get to the pole, and then actually in an incredible kind of feat of physical and mental strength decided to carry on past the pole, even when she knew that she wouldn't be able to complete her goal. And I think that's hugely inspiring. I actually met her the other day. She's still recovering, and she's still kind of fighting back from that, the physical sort of imprint of that expedition. But what she did was amazing, and she set a record for the longest journey by longest polar journey for anybody, male or female, which is also really awesome.
Oh, it's so inspiring. Yeah, it really is.
Really great, and definitely in that process, she was trying to inspire more women of colour to, you know, to get out there and to try these things, and to not listen when everybody's telling you that you're not the right person, the face doesn't fit, you haven't got the right background. And I think her strength really showed that it doesn't matter where you're from, or what your background is, or what experience you have, because prior to the 2 expeditions she did, she'd done nothing like this before as well. So really impressive. And then also there was a woman this season who absolutely smashed the solo speed record to the pole. She took 5 days off the previous record, a French lady called Caroline Cote. And that was right in the middle of, you know, being on the ice at the same time, having terrible, terrible conditions. And she just managed to sort of power through all of it and get to the pole in record time, which, and from what I can tell, she looked amazing at the end of it as well. So she just prepared, planned, trained for it, and knocked the socks off the whole of the expedition. So I think another hugely inspiring one.
There's something really interesting about that. You know, I suppose as women, and someone like Preet, who, you know, a woman, and she's dealt with being a non-white woman as well. We've already been struggling against things our entire lives, and being from backgrounds where you don't have money and you want to make something of yourself. Like, so actually, you know, the hardest part is getting yourself out there. Once you're in Antarctica, I'm sure you found, like, you can cope with the physical hardship, because, you know, you just become a human who's, I'm just going to take care of myself and do that. That's actually really simple. It's all the process of getting to Antarctica, which is quite difficult. I mean, I know when we were looking for funding, it was difficult because we were told constantly we didn't have the right connections. So, you know, it was definitely a class/background thing. We were told even though we could amount like an adventure CV of different things we'd done, we were told, no, you have to go on this specific trip that we recommend, that is put on by this person I know who runs it in Greenland. And it cost about £20,000 each. And it's like, don't have that kind of money. And if I did, I'd much rather use it to take some young people to go and have an experience that's going to help more people. So it's still definitely a place where there's barriers. But it's fantastic to hear these things that are happening. And Sophie, I want to ask you, I know we're not even in the Q&As, but I want to ask you a bit about, because your trip with the Ice Maidens was so inspiring to me to see, because you actually proved, like, scientifically, that women are just as strong, if not actually stronger than men in these extreme environments, didn't you?
Yeah, so we were just to put a bit of background on it, we were a team of 6, and we were the first female team to ski across Antarctica using just muscle power, so no kites, no other aids, and it was a distance of 1,700 kilometers via the South Pole, and it took us 61 days, so quite a long time to be out on the ice. And it was, you know, for me, completely life-changing experience. Coming together with a group of women that I'd never met before, you know, prior to the kind of the training and selection process. And the difference that we had compared to many people sort of applying for these or trying to set up these expeditions, and definitely the kind of hurdles that you've described, Phoebe, is that we had the army behind us. And of course, traditionally, you know, the military has backed many polar expeditions right back to, you know, the days of Shackleton and Scott. It was all a strong sort of military focus supporting that. But what was different with ours is that we were trying to involve as many women in the military as possible. And of course, women in the military are still quite a minority. And often we found that, you know, there are loads of adventurous training activities that are offered, whether it's skiing or climbing or mountaineering. And often there is only sort of one or no women on those courses. So it was really, the Ice Maiden Expedition was about showing women what women can do, and giving us an opportunity to go out there and prove some people wrong. But I have to say, all credit to the army that they really did support us, and there was not one person that we came across in the army that doubted us, and they were fully 100% backing us and behind us. But they did help out, with being able to help us get some of those commercial sponsors that we couldn't. And I tried for at least a year, applying to every single company I'd ever heard of to get us that sponsorship. And it's an absolutely soul destroying process, and so many dead ends that, really do wear you down. And I can definitely see how you ended up kind of switching focus for that, because it just gets really depressing. But luckily the Army managed to pull in some sponsors for us, and we did get to go south in 2017 to take on this challenge. But what was particularly interesting is that the year before we went, there was a team of Special Forces men who went out and did a similar expedition to us, so a continental crossing, slightly different route. And they did a load of medical research with Coventry University, and they were looking into their physiology. So measuring all sorts of things from body mass before and after the expedition to sort of muscle mass that have been consumed. All sorts of different kind of details of our physiology were measured before and after. And if anyone's seen the pictures of the team, they came back in quite a state. They'd lost tons and tons of weight. Their bodies had started to consume their muscles, so they really were incredibly kind of physically degraded afterwards. So when our team went, Coventry University wanted to compare our team of 6 with that team of 6. And do an almost sort of like for like with the male and the female body. And obviously that's kind of, it's difficult to compare these things exactly. The conditions are different every season, but it was a really interesting study. And what they found was that, having told us that everything would basically stop when we got to Antarctica, like our hair wouldn't grow, our nails wouldn't grow, our periods would stop. The results were absolutely staggering, because we had kind of 2 weeks of our bodies going into free fall as we were skiing for 10 hours a day in this kind of crazy environment. And then the body just went, okay, this is the new normal. Much like, if you're a mum, you just then accept that you don't sleep anymore. It's just that kind of sort of adapt and overcome. And then, we hadn't taken nail clippers, and we hadn't prepared for all of these kind of things. And our bodies just adapted and kept going and kept going. And by the end of the expedition, the team in base camp said they'd never seen a team come back in better condition. And they were pretty much questioning whether we'd even started.
You look too good. You look too good.
You look too good. And we were kind of gutted, because we thought, we'll be coming back and eating cake for 6 months or something. But, the weight loss was minimal. Our bodies didn't consume any of our muscle. And, the results basically showed that the female body doing extreme endurance in extreme environments has this incredible ability to just adapt and adjust and keep functioning and stay healthy. And I think it's been shown a lot with ultra running. There's some women who've just done some incredible feats that are really beginning to make men question who takes the top spot in endurance events. So,
well, I mean, I'm not going to just throw back the mum thing again, but we grow humans and push them out. I mean, that's the most endurance I can think I'll ever do in my life. And my God, I don't know why anyone would ever question the women as the weaker sex. Like, definitely not. But it is interesting the thing you said about looks, and about people saying about when you came back, oh, you almost look too good. Have you really done it? Like, that reminds me a little bit of when I started out adventuring. People would be like, oh, look at what she looks like. There's no way she spent the night there. She just set up the shot and then came back in the morning to see it. And it's almost like we're always criticized. We're always looking at how we look. So like the conversations I had when we get in sponsorship, I was taken back to being what I looked like. The conversation about, I suppose the reason why some girls don't even want to get into the outdoors, because they don't want to risk looking sweaty, because we're supposed to look a certain way. And we could never just go and do an expedition. I don't think we'd ever do an expedition and someone wouldn't comment on how we looked, whether we looked good, whether we looked really rough, whether, I think all of those things would always be commented on. And I think that's another kind of interesting thing that happens with women.
Yeah,
you know
definitely.
Sorry, I actually had like a similar issue. I mean, I still can't believe that I went to Antarctica, but then whenever I spoke about it or anything, people just thought I was lying, and that there's no way that I went to Antarctica. And I'm like, look, there are pictures here, you know. But yeah, it's actually weird how many people could not believe it.
Yeah.
Because they're in my area and my age, you know.
Yeah. I mean, it's just not something that you do. It's still seen as something that we don't do. So
Definitely. And I'm really interested definitely in this you know, the thing about how you look and how people think you should look, and you know, actually the freedom of being on an expedition where you don't shower for 2 months. I mean, that was the smell was something else, but at least I could only smell myself and not my teammates. But that you know, that's a bit extreme, but it was really nice to go somewhere where you don't care what you look like. You know, you're doing a job and you're purely there for like one focus.
Yeah.
So just to do that and not have the other thing that was incredibly freeing was not having a mobile phone, so not having to communicate with anybody. You just sign off, and then the headspace is incredible. So you're doing something really difficult and really extreme, but it's so relaxing mentally because you're not having to juggle all the millions of things that we all try and fit into our lives. All you've got to do is kind of get up, feed yourself, keep going, support your team, and then do that every day. It was
yeah.
Really
There's something very freeing about it, and I mean that's why I ended up falling in love with the outdoors, was the fact that it's the most non-judgmental space there is, and you know, it rains the same. If it rains on everyone. It doesn't just rain on you, and you know, like you said, you don't care what you look like. You know, I remember the first time I went on a solo wild camp, and before I went, everyone told me I was going to get mugged or attacked or whatever because I was a woman daring to go out on my own to do it. And I remember when I got back from spending a couple of nights out in the wilds of Wales and catching sight of my face in the rearview mirror, and it was like sunburn, because I got sun freakishly, which I certainly grown up in North Wales, never expected to get. I was sunburned, had midge bites all over my face, and I remember thinking, God, I've never looked less glamorous, but I've never felt so good. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. And on our We2 Foundation expedition, you know, our young people, I'm sure our listeners will agree, when everyone first met up on that first day in London, when we were planting our forest to offset the carbon, like people did care what they looked like, and people would put makeup on and all that. And then by day 3, when we're like heading down over the Drake Passage, everyone's like, I don't really care what I look like anymore. This is not important. I'm in the moment. I'm doing this thing. And that's the wonderful power of nature and the outdoors, of just freeing you from all that and just focusing on what's happening right in front of you.
Yeah, definitely. And I think if that lasts as well, it's really nice if you can come back into real life and care a little bit less about what you look like, and just think, oh, I haven't had a shower today. Well, you know, I haven't had one for months. It wasn't that bad. It's not the end of the world.
Alison, has it changed you in that respect since coming back?
Probably, yeah. I don't really know how to go into details about it, but it has definitely changed me in that aspect.
And also, Alison, I'd really like to know about the people that you're with and the friendships that you form, because certainly for us, we were a team, and a team of 6, and they're now my closest friends, and we've shared something that no one else can ever sort of experience or understand. And I think for you guys as well, you were a small group, and you will have got to know each other in a really kind of intense environment. Have you got really good lasting friendships from it?
I actually wouldn't say so. I mean, yes, we have experienced something that is, you know, life-changing, and we experienced it together, but we came from such different areas and everything. There wasn't really much to relate to, because to be honest, me living in Wales is so much different to like Eve living in Ireland, or at least living in London. The culture is just so different. You know, we just haven't, you know, been relatable enough to actually form those friendships. But if we meet each other again, if we do go on another expedition or something, maybe that will change. We'll see.
I think it's funny. It's definitely, I feel like I have inherited like 10 teenagers, and I feel very close to them. I'm constantly asking them, do you need this? Can I help with this? Can I do this? I think yeah, and also I think it bonded. I think it's an age thing too, because I think when you're that age, it's bonded you, and I think later on, everyone's still kind of in touch. And we sometimes put things on the WhatsApp group, you know, where we're saying, oh, the Northern Lights are supposed to be out. Has anyone seen them? Or do that kind of thing. I think it'll be one of those things. It's like type 2 fun. At the time, you're not really sure what it's doing to you, and then you come back to it later and go, you know, this was actually really something. So the next plan for the foundation is we obviously want to take another group of young people on a life-changing expedition somewhere. So we're going to get the young people who came this year, this last season, shall we say, to do an expedition in Britain somewhere to raise money for the next one. So we'll see if any more friendships form then.
I was going to say it sounds like you're due an extreme sleep out reunion, one of Phoebe's specials.
Plan.
I think what I've taken from Phoebe, from what you've done, is I love that a lot of your adventures have been in the UK, and it's so accessible and it's so sustainable, and it's actually just thinking of great ways to kind of just play in the outdoors. And I think that's a really brilliant and inspiring message, because so few people actually, you know, so quick to jump on a plane and go somewhere hot and forget that there's actually some stunning and amazing places where you can go and find.
Well, just to sort of add to that, when we couldn't get the funding, we'd already planned the route we wanted to do in Antarctica. So me and Dwayne, to kickstart the funding, we took 40 days and we walked the length of mainland Britain, pulling wheeled sleds over winter, camping the entire way, to kind of do an Antarctica in Britain expedition to kind of kickstart this off. So and we definitely saw parts of the UK you'd never see otherwise. And it was an incredible adventure. It was everything that you said from Antarctica, you know, the bonding, the memories for life, it just did so much. So I think it's massively important to take people who never think they'll get there to somewhere like Antarctica, but then it's also massively important to show that adventure really is a state of mind, and we can all do it, you know, wherever we find ourselves.
Yeah, totally. I think we might give that a go for sort of Ice Maiden round 2 with the babies in the wheeled.
Yeah,
maybe just for a few days. I think we've got some audience questions, and there are 1 or 2 already, but it would be really great if anybody would like to send in their questions. Please feel free to ask us anything. And we've got Elise back as well for these. So social synergy asking, how do you earn enough money to be an adventurer, and how do you balance the challenges of funding with this and stability of income? Probably one for Phoebe, I think, because I've been wondering this as well.
So obviously I do I am an adventurer, but I also am a writer. So writing is how I make my money, and I also do some radio and presenting and talks, and yeah, so I think grown-ups call it a portfolio career. So there's something at the center, which is like going and having these incredible adventures, and then it's basically spreading the word about them, and that's how I make my money. You know, I'm not, like I said, not from a rich family. I was on my own for many years, still doing this. So yeah, it was just, I made the decision. I wanted to do this. I'm not rich, but I'm happy, and I'm always say I'm rich in experience, and for me that's the most important thing ever. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's easy, but if you really want to do it, there's definitely a way you can make it happen.
And obviously with that, you worked for quite a long time for Wanderlust and do lots of travel writing, and perhaps people don't realise that if you're travel writing, often those trips are for free.
Yeah, they can be for free. Yeah, that's obviously a way that it happens. It can be a partnership with the tourist board. Increasingly, it's doing campaigns on your social media that you can, you know, suddenly influencer is a thing. But yeah, nothing is guaranteed. It's the kind of career that some of my friends who have very stable jobs cannot get their head around, and it terrifies them, because some months I have no idea where I'm going to get the money to pay my mortgage from. But luckily, I like the unpredictability of adventure, and life is just one big adventure after all.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. I've definitely upset my family. I think my whole life of being, I want a portfolio career. I want to do different things. I don't want stability of a 9-to-5 job. Currently, very lucky to have one, but it's a bit more sensible with a family, I think. So next question from Paula. Are there inequalities in the infrastructure of Antarctic expeditions that affect women specifically? For example, with regard to periods? I don't think there are particularly. You know, we sort of plan different ways to manage ours, and always happy to talk about pee, poo, and periods, particularly with young people. It's always the first question we get. And I think it's just not an issue whether there's different types of contraception you can take to make sure that you don't have one in a sort of, you know, in an outdoor environment, or whether you can use methods such as the moon cup to manage it without too much waste. There's definitely a whole host of different things that that can be used to sort of manage periods in these kind of environments, and I can't think of anything else apart from perhaps some bits of kit don't necessarily fit very well around the female chest, and you know, some clothing again isn't adapted that well for the female body, but generally, and perhaps not so much for different shapes and sizes, but I think there's absolutely nothing that would really stop a team of women wanting to have an Antarctic adventure.
No, I think you're right that it wouldn't. There's nothing that can't be overcome, but I do think it definitely has it affects people thinking they can or perhaps would want to. Even when I've done talks in schools to young people about just wild camping in Britain, the idea some people have about being on a period and going on a multi-day expedition in Britain just absolutely terrifies them. Like, what do you do? So I think it can be more psychological block than anything. And like you said, you know, kits. When I first started out, you know, kit, if it was women's kit, they had a mantra in the industry, which was shrink it and pink it. And frankly, that thinking has died, but it's not gone away completely. And sometimes it is very difficult to get the right kit, and especially even getting winter boots as a woman, winter boots for mountaineering in the UK, there's about 3 choices. And if your foot doesn't fit that exact size, there's not really much you can do about that. And I think I've been banging the drum for better women's kit for years, and there's more women designers again have come through now, and more companies taking them on, but it's still there is still that there, I think, that needs addressing. And when I've spoke to manufacturers about why it is, their thing is, well, we come up with designs, but then the shops won't buy them because there's no demand. If there's no demand, they won't buy them, and it's kind of chicken and egg. So I tell women, just go in these shops all the time and ask for them, because the more they get that message through, the better the kit will become for us all.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's definitely the case. One of my favourites, Helen Booth has asked, one of my favourite books is Women in the Polar Night by Christian Ritter. Her descriptions of solitude are just incredible. Can you recommend any books that describe the beauty of the polar regions? That probably would have been my first choice. I absolutely love that book. It's about a woman in Svalbard who overwintered. Her husband was a hunter, and she went and spent a lot of the winter on her own in this hut in the middle of Svalbard, living in the darkness and just kind of finding ways to be fascinated by the landscape, no matter what the conditions were outside. And that's hugely inspiring to think how psychologically she managed to cope with such a difficult environment. So that's definitely one of my favorites. Phoebe, do you have any, or Alison, have you read some books that really got you?
You go first, Alison.
I didn't really have time to read any books recently due to uni, so and to be fair, I didn't really have time to read any books since I came back from Antarctica, and that's mainly when my interest started, because it sort of looked like my nurse signed me up to go on this expedition, and then I completely forgot about it, and then about half a year later, I just see you're going to Antarctica, and I'm just like, is that a scam? So I don't know, I kind of thought about it more when I actually got to Antarctica, and when I came back, I didn't really have time to read any, unfortunately.
I mean, I always recommend, like Felicity Aston did, has written she's at least written one. I feel like she's written 2, maybe.
Yeah, definitely 2.
So I definitely recommend hers. And I like some of the historical ones. They're not necessarily first person, but there's I don't know if you've heard of an explorer called Ada Blackjack, who was an Indigenous woman who went on a disastrous British expedition to Wrangel Island, so in the kind of Russian Arctic. And with all these British men who were funded, it was really badly run. All the men died, and she was the only survivor. She managed to survive along with the ship's cat. She was there as a seamstress, but it's a remarkable story. I highly recommend reading it because because it's an Indigenous woman, which I love, and again, we don't hear those stories like you said. There's oral stories, oral history of like Maori women perhaps going to Antarctica, but of course we know the Sami tribes, we know the Inuit, and I find those stories really fascinate me as well, and need to be told more. And then also I think Carrie Herbert as well, who was of course the daughter of polar explorer Wally Herbert, and she's written quite a lot about women because she when I think she was about 9 months old when her mum and dad took her up to Greenland, and she lived there for the first year of her life, and so she's got quite an interesting relationship with the polar region. So they would be my recommendations.
Brilliant. I think there's also one just come in here. Recommend Sur, as in South, by Ursula Le Guin. I don't know it, but
check that out.
Let's check out. I'm afraid we're out of time, so we're going to have to just wrap up there. But thank you so much to all of you for being part of our panel, and to Elise in her absence for dropping in as well. Thank you also to our audience for joining us tonight and putting forward some very good and thought-provoking questions. I hope you've enjoyed it certainly as much as I have, and thanks Phoebe and Alison for being part of that. Please let us know what you thought of tonight's events. You can leave your comments in the comments stream, or get in touch with us by email or on social media. Details at the bottom of the screen. And last of all, this is the last in the series, so I'd just like to say a really big thank you to our outstanding production team of Jessie Norman, Lawrence Becco and Heather Barrable. And they've done a fantastic job in putting this fascinating webinar series together. Don't forget, if you've really enjoyed it, you can share the YouTube link with your contacts as well. If you've enjoyed the series this much that you can't bear to live without it, we still have a few more of our podcasts being released. So there are tons of stories on there, from Dan Snow talking about the discovery of the Endurance to Maya Rose Craig, who's known as Bird Girl. And even if you want to hear more about the Ice Maiden Expedition, you can tune in to me talking about that as well. Finally, we've been talking about books. There's just been a whole load of new books added to the UK Antarctic Heritage Trust shop. So do take a look at those for our recommendations too. And last but not least, who doesn't love a penguin? Please, if you know someone that also loves a penguin, do dig deep and adopt a penguin to help raise funds for the UK Antarctic Heritage Trust and the conservation work that we do down in Antarctica, preserving our historical sites. I think that's all we have time for tonight. But thank you everyone for making this such an enjoyable evening. And thank
you to you too, Sophie. Thank you to you for inspiring us. And yeah, it's been a wonderful conversation. And thank Alison and Elise for coming and coming to Antarctica and coming tonight.
Thanks it was very a great much. Experience.
Thanks, Anne.